How does Assetto Corsa Rally, following its update, now compare to the big daddy of rally, Richard Burns Rally? Well, after playing AC Rally for 10 hours straight with the update, I thought it'd be fun to jump into Richard Burns Rally so we could really sort of see what the differences were. This video is going to be incredibly boring, incredibly dry, and a lot of people won't believe anything I say anyway. So probably don't bother watching it, that's what I'd recommend. But you can make yourself a cup of tea, and if you want to be able to unsubscribe after finding out how boring our content is, first of all, you need to subscribe to then unsubscribe. Also, click the like button, and thank you to all channel members and supporters. I could only create this type of drivel with your support, so thank you very much. Now, first things first, obviously you can get AC Rally through Steam, and it's like a modern game, very easy to buy, set up your wheel and get going. Richard Burns Rally, pretty awesome. You can go to Rally Sim Fans, download the torrent, download their installer. It is a little bit more of a fiddle to get going, but not too bad, and it's totally free. So AC Rally is easier to get initially and easier to set up initially, but I wouldn't say RBR and Richard Burns Rally is that much harder to get going. So that's quite a big difference though in terms of just getting it if you're a bit of a total noob with computers. Graphically, obviously, AC Rally is using Unreal 5 engine. It's very shiny. It's got these lighting things. But the downside of that is it's a lot more demanding on your computer. Richard Burns Rally runs on an absolute potato. And Richard Burns Rally runs at 4 billion FPS, has VR support, has all the triple support, does all the stuff really, really well that you'd want from a hardcore simulator. Whereas AC Rally is still a little bit flaky in those regards. Obviously, it's an early access, so hopefully things will improve. But you do get the thing with Richard Burns Rally that it's very much geared towards being a proper simulator that supports all the simulator stuff you'd expect. Now, another really big and very obvious difference between Richard Burns Rally and AC Rally is that Richard Burns Rally has 300 years of mod tracks and cars that have been added to it. Now, that actually is a really big and important difference, regardless of handling and everything else. If you're doing rally, the central point of rally is that you don't know the stages that you're driving on that well. You might do a recce, but you don't really know them. So having so many tracks in Richard Burns Rally, some of them really high quality, some of them not so high quality, but having so many of them means that it actually is a legit rally. Whereas due to the lack of content in AC Rally, at this point in time at least, it turns into a hill climb game within 3 or 4 hours of playing it. Whereas you could play Richard Burns Rally for 20, 30, 40 hours and it would still feel like an actual rally game where there's stuff you haven't memorised and learnt. There are really long stages built into Assetto Corsa Rally, but still there's tons of long stages in Richard Burns Rally. So from a pure rally process of rally and not knowing a location, it doesn't come close. Richard Burns Rally is just on another level. I would actually really say that AC Rally is basically a hill climb game. It's not really a rally title. It's what they're trying to do, but you know what I mean? It is a hill climb game, effectively. It's just what happens when you don't have that much content. That will change over time, hopefully. Maybe ACR. I'm going to say ACR instead of AC Rally now. Maybe ACR in the future will open up to modding. I hope they do. And that would really help. And in the long term, that could be really good. But yeah, Richard Burns Rally is basically the only actual rally title from a sort of stage and rally driving perspective, putting aside everything else. Also, RBR looks bloody good still. I was really surprised playing it. I was like, this grass looks great, these trees look great, distant textures look bad, cars look a bit rubbish, lighting's a bit rubbish, but the grass is fantastic, and the road surfaces are really quite good in it. So I was just surprised how good RBR is. If you play it in VR as well, and you're driving really quickly and you're focused on driving, the raw shininess of textures is not the most important thing. But it's worth keeping those differences in mind. I also want to nip in the bud this, people get upset when you compare a non-modded game to a modded game, and it's a really weird thing to get upset about because the modded game exists, and just because you haven't had to pay for it and its mods doesn't undermine it, doesn't mean you can't make a comparison. I don't understand that complaint. But then separate to that, RBR, out of the box, the original Richard Burns Rally is a really nice solid game with a good amount of tracks, really good solid single player. Ironically, you can't actually physically complete it on the hardest setting because the car always breaks on the third to last stage. It's one of the biggest trolls in video games. Such a hard game. Dark Souls has nothing on RBR. I think it did get patched eventually, but yeah, you're talking serious investment to get done over as a gamer with this title. But then it also has the rally score built into it. Just the basic original game, absolutely superb. It was 20 years ahead of its time. You can still play it now, and it's arguably as good as AC Rally in different ways. So even the vanilla game is fantastic. So I just don't get what people are on about with the whole mod thing. Anyway, just wanted to point that out. As an attack helicopter flies over my house. Be careful, the fanboys are equipped. So, now on to the actual handling and main gameplay differences since the 0.5 update in AC Rally. And what's really interesting is, having gone from AC Rally to RBR back to back, you notice that RBR has, in many ways, a much more simplistic feeling physics and tyre behaviour to it than ACR. In RBR, the cars are very much always wanting to be in a very sort of progressive slide. Everything kind of wants to be driven like a 90s rally car, and it's a very smooth transition from a small amount of slide to a large amount of slide, and really easy to hold, slip and move the car around. In ACR, the cars have a more pronounced in the bite, in a groove, and then a slightly wider slip behaviour, and then crazy behaviour. But there's definitely more variability and dynamics, I would say, to the tyres in ACR compared to Richard Burns Rally. I would say one of my big complaints with RBR is that the tyres don't seem to grip into the road as much as you would like in some occasions, and especially with newer rally cars. And I'd also say Richard Burns Rally has an issue with braking, in that the high speed to low speed braking is just really drawn out. It's not as punchy as you would probably expect from a rally car. You really notice it's very easy to just continue sliding in RBR for hairpin corners. It's something you really have to like make a mental note of in your head in RBR to avoid sideways sliding off the track. Whereas in ACR, things are a lot more punchy, and as I say, there's like a groove and then more of a slip condition. However, though, in ACR, there seems to be an issue with not being able to do sustained drifts properly. So intentionally maintaining a really long drift and holding that slide and controlling the angle of that slide in a progressive way, especially at mid to high speed. In ACR, the cars want to keep oscillating out of the slide and basically always just want to be doing a power slide. So the ACR driving style ends up being one of poke, power slide, return. Poke, power slide, return. Which you might not notice if you're driving on a straight bit of track, then doing a corner, then a straight bit of track. But if you're driving older rally cars on dirt tracks and longer slidey corners, you'll notice it's really awkward to try and sustain a typical rally line through corners. So that's a huge physics hole and completely negates a fundamental part of 90s rally car driving. And you'll also find in AC Rally that the cars are massively over-affected by slight pitch and camber of the road. I don't mean in it's off camber so you're going to want to slide off the track kind of way, or it's slightly pitched down so that affects handling. It's just really, really exaggerated. Very slight pitches can cause the car to just want to keep going off the track as if there was oil on the track. Whereas RBR, though it's, I would say, definitely too simplistic, too smooth, and in some ways too predictable, you don't seem to have these exaggerated components to the handling. You can very much get into the flow of it. It's more predictable. You're still going to get caught out by making mistakes, but they're going to be because you made a mistake, not because of some like really out there aspect to the physics, right? So you can learn in some ways, if you practice a bit with ACR, you can learn the types of corners, but then again it's turning into a hill climb rather than you just reactively driving. Whereas in RBR, you load up any random stage and it's a lot more manageable. It just makes more sense. Though, admittedly, I do think it is overly simplistic. It is overly smooth. It's overly simple. It's probably a way of putting it, the tire behaviour. So, you know, you kind of have to pick your poison. Do you want something that's more consistent and predictable, but actually in some not going to have any like really random out there stuff, or do you want something that's a little bit pokey, in some ways more realistic, with the grip coming and going, and you know, you'll see little adjustments on lower speed corners that you probably wouldn't be making to the same degree in RBR. Do you want that, but then do you want it to completely black hole fall apart at times? Lastly, I would also say you really notice playing RBR the way that you can use the weight of the vehicle and Scandinavian flick, or manipulate the car from one turn to another and manipulate the weight of the vehicle to then set up another corner. It's way better in Richard Burns Rally than AC Rally. You can absolutely flick the cars into corners in AC Rally and use the weight of the vehicles, but the way that the tyres behave and how it drives means that I don't think you're really fundamentally doing that as much. Maybe a better way to put it is that is fundamental to how you drive Richard Burns Rally, especially the older 90s 2000 rally cars that I really like. That is absolutely, you're not going to drive a stage properly in RBR unless you've got that using the weight of the vehicle down. Whereas in AC Rally, it's not really a thought of mine at all. I'm sort of driving it more like I drive a track racer in some ways. I say you can still use the weight of the vehicles, but it's just, if you play both games, it'll really be obvious to you very quickly. But ultimately, you know, you can play multiple games, and I think the big positive is having another serious rally title in development, with the developer very receptive to trying to, like, community stuff, but also themselves trying to build an actual proper rally simulator without them seemingly being beholden to some like arbitrary publisher deadline and licensing stuff. So I think that's really bodes really well for AC Rally, and I like the way, the direction that it's going in. And yeah, you know, you can still play Richard Burns Rally and you can still play AC Rally, and I think if you're really into simulators and car handling and actual raw driving, ultimately you will benefit from actually just playing multiple simulators and kind of treating them like each sim is almost like a different vehicle. They've obviously got individual vehicles in each sim and different tyres and weather condition, but really you kind of have to treat every single racing sim, track or rally, as if that sim itself is a specific type of vehicle, and then you have to work out how to drive that type of vehicle. And that will only ever make you a better driver, being adaptable, really, if that's your goal, to be a better driver. And then from someone that just hates themselves and wants to just repeatedly drive into trees and feel terrible about their driving, then playing lots of simulators increases the opportunity to have it demonstrated to you that you suck at driving. So that's fantastic, isn't it? You can't go wrong. What an enjoyable, boring video. If you got this far, then teapot away in the comments section. I am actually going to check out the Wreckfest 2 update that just dropped, and we'll live stream. And I have to say, Wreckfest 2 actually has pretty decent physics, and it's just really fun to drive. So it's another good title for those of you neglected off-road fans. And I think rally fans, we have been neglected. I mean, it's pretty depressing. It's 22 years since Richard Burns Rally came out. Dirt Rally was great. You know, there are some good rally games out there, but at the moment, I'd say really of the sort of really good titles, it's Richard Burns Rally, Dirt Rally 1 and 2, and then AC Rally. Those would be the ones that I would categorically own, and then I'd maybe venture into some of the others if I hate myself. But Wreckfest 2 is great, so get that as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you soon in a live stream or something else. Have a good one. Happy tea drinking, and goodbye.